Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed Live. We are super excited to have you joining us today from wherever you're streaming from, whether it's Learn TV, via the Microsoft Reactor, via Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're coming from. We are so happy to have you joining us today. And I want to remind you that we will be taking questions throughout the entirety of this session from wherever you're streaming from, but we encourage you to join us on Learn TV at aka.ms/LearnTV. That being said, we have a jam-packed show today. We have an exciting show today with lots of demos and lots of news, and we're going to be talking about Oracle and how to move Oracle workloads to Azure SQL. So without further ado, I want to bring up our main speaker for the day, Alexandra. Hi, Alexandra. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here and really happy to talk about Oracle migrations.
Awesome. And we're happy to have you here as well. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm a program manager in Azure Data, and I'm looking over the heterogeneous migration space, which is quite big because we are looking at different sources, even beyond Oracle. We are talking about DB2, we are talking about Sybase, MySQL, and the list can actually go on. So I'm looking over migration tools for all of these sources and also helping customers successfully land in Azure SQL.
Awesome, great. And from what I understand, you're actually not alone here today. We are going to have two wonderful folks joining us to help with Q&A on the chat. So I'm just going to bring them up for a moment. We have Stephen and Ben from the team. Feel free to say hi or anything else you want to add.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Stephen, and I'm super excited to help everybody out in the chat.
Awesome, great. Thanks you guys so much. So remember that these folks are standing by to answer your questions. So use them, use the chat, and even some questions will be displaying on the screen. So we love to get any interactions from you all. So just let us know how you want to engage. All right, so let's get into the show, Alexandra. Can you tell us what we're going to talk about today?
Sure. Today's topic is going to be Oracle workloads that you are looking to migrate to Azure SQL. And in order to do that, we want to go through several points. The first one is going to be migration driver itself. So why are we here today? Why are we streaming live? And why are we working on all these migration tools? And once we got the why out of the way, we can focus on the how. How are we going to move databases? How are we going to convert schema? That's not an easy task, and everybody knows it. And last but not least, the most important part, what about applications? We can move databases, but if nobody can connect to those databases, then our migration is not successful. So we can actually give you a hand on the application migration and have a starting point in the assessment. Besides all the slides, because I know nobody loves slides, I don't love slides either. We'll have a lot of demos actually. So we are planning packed sessions with demos and hands-on. Hopefully they will work, but at least we plan them.
Awesome. I'm excited to see the demos. And to be honest, I'm excited to see the slides too.
Definitely. So without further ado, let's dive into the migration drivers. That sounds quite fancy and it sounds like a business word, but business is actually something that kicks off the migration. On every conversation, everything that you want to do has to come up with a business case. It has to have a scenario or a justification behind the scenes. So what are our drivers? Well, everybody knows about digital transformation. This is the word of, I would say, not century, maybe that's too much, but at least post-COVID and during COVID. So everybody wants to perform digital transformation, but what's behind it? And the steps that you need to do are a little bit more complicated. Databases are an important factor. And as we have seen for the last year, data is the core of the business, and it's very important in order to make decisions, in order to predict things, in order to follow up trends, and first of all, in order to help people. So where does the data sit? In the databases. Now, we have large ranges of databases around the world. First of all, SQL Server and of course Azure on SQL, which is awesome, but as well as other database systems as Oracle, mainframes, Sybase, and so on. So people are looking on the latest and greatest on every technology sector. We've seen a lot of customers looking to migrate from Oracle. This conversation comes in the context of either an optimization of cost or in an application modernization. They are looking towards a newer language with a modern database system that has built-in intelligence and so on. Or they are at the end of their support cycle or at the end of their contract and they need to perform an upgrade. These are all very good timeline points where you can start this conversation and you can look at what can you do to enable business to use the data smarter, faster, and even better. Everybody has a cloud first mindset, and that's something that has a lot of good points behind the scene. You can reduce a lot the administrative overhead. You can get the latest and greatest in terms of updates, in terms of the code that we deploy. There are a lot of benefits that you can leverage. And we do offer a lot of options, flexible and very performant in our Azure cloud. So there is an opportunity to modernize database platforms. And Oracle also can be modernized and can be migrated to any of the solutions that we have in our data space, either Azure SQL or even SQL on-prem. But when we talk about Oracle migrations, we have other sources even outside the SQL stack, and that can be even Postgres, or we can run SQL Server in an Azure VM, or it can go to Azure Synapse Analytics. Are you confused? Well, so was I. So was I. People want options, and when we give them option, then confusion comes into place as well. So what should you choose? There isn't an easy answer to that, and we try to make that decision easier for you. So we built something that we call data migration guides. You can find them on our Azure database migration guides. You have the link on the bottom of the page, datamigration.microsoft.com. And we've built a sort of step-to-step guidance for every source and every target. So if we talk about Oracle and you want to understand what are the, let's say, implications of moving to Postgres or to SQL or managed instance or Synapse, you can take a look at those guides. And definitely the flexibility of migration process plays a good role in your decision. So have a look before deciding on your source.
Yeah, and these guides are super helpful. I've actually used some of them myself, and they go step by step based on whatever source and target. So I agree, great resource.
Thank you so much, Anna. Looking forward to get your feedback as well. We are committed to maintain them and update them, and your feedback is an important part of that. So on any platform that you're using to stream, please feel free to not only to ask questions, but also provide the feedback. We are here to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. So out of all these sources, why Azure SQL? Why should you go to Azure SQL? And as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things behind the scenes. You have built-in intelligence, you have adaptive query processing. We are doing a lot of work on the processor itself and capabilities of the engine in order to automatically perform better. You have, of course, a security standard and the mechanism to identify security threats and assess that. You have a guaranteed SLA. And of course, performance is one of the key players here, together with the competitive TCO. So Azure SQL is one of the sources chosen by our customers, and there are a lot of reasons behind that. Azure SQL in all shapes, from Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance, or even Azure SQL on a VM. So once we've chosen our target and we are going to Azure SQL, we need to think about our migration phases. So how are we going to perform migration or modernization? That's not always a straightforward process or a single step process. You'll have to divide it in several stages and identify the right tools and people to work on each and every stage. How do we start? Well, the starting point is actually the discovery. And that's quite funny because working with a wide range of customers around the world, we've noticed that most of the time, discovery can take some time in order to understand exactly what are the schemas or databases that we are looking at, what are the information that we need about those instances, login, permissions, and so on. So just setting up the environment and the first step of the pre-migration process can also be something that may need a little bit of attention. How do we automatically discover? Well, right now we have a sort of Oracle inventory scripts. They are included in the Azure Migration Guide. You can find them on the portal. You have a lot of information on how to use them on the migration guides. We've also included all other IPs that can be useful in the migration space. And the Oracle inventory scripts is definitely part of that collection of IPs. Once you get more information about the instance, the second part is to assess. So let's say I'm considering maybe two sources. I'm not really sure. I'm thinking about managed instance, Azure SQL DB. I'm not really sure where I should move. I want to assess. I want to understand the implication. What is automatically converted? What is not converted? Do I have any errors? And how much time do I need to actually invest in that conversion? And the tool to use here is called SQL Server Migration Assistant. It comes in 5 flavors. You have SSMA for Oracle, Sybase, DB2, MySQL, and Access as well. So you can use SSMA to actually assess, convert, deploy the schema, and move the data to your target. So through all of these steps, you have a sort of end-to-end experience that can be achieved in SSMA. Once you have done the movement of the schema and the movement of the data, the next question is now, am I ready to connect to the new source? Well, not quite yet. You also need to have a look at your applications and see what needs to be remediated. Maybe there are some connection strings that needs to be updated, maybe some drivers that needs to be updated, or maybe some queries that have to be converted. And how can we do that? Well, for the assessment part, you can use one of our extensions that I'm going to demo today called the Data Access Migration Toolkit, as well as SSMA for conversion of those dynamic PLSQL queries. And besides the tools, you will also need to test. Test is always very important, even for us. Well, my colleagues from development can confirm that as well. We have tons of functional testing and performance tests that we perform to make sure that we are on track and we have not, let's say, missed something or introduced some issues in our development. So that's something that needs to happen also on your application side.
Awesome. I love this, Alexandra. I love, this is the migration process for migrating from anywhere to anywhere. But I love how kind of at every step of the process, we have some sort of tool where we're making it easier for folks to move. Now, I'm seeing a lot of SSMA or SQL Server Migration Assistant. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that kind of relates to migrating Oracle workloads?
Well, definitely. SQL Server Migration Assistant is the tool that you can use for the assessment for Oracle. So you can connect to your database. I'm going to show you how you can do that. You can even migrate to the schema, convert it, move the data, or if you prefer to generate SSIS packages, customize it, you can do this in SSMA and run the data movement outside. So you can use a single tool from assessment until close to application assessment. So from database assessment until application assessment.
Awesome.
Cool. So SQL Server Migration Assistant for Oracle, I already told you a little bit about it. So what do I want to add? The targets, 2012 and above, SQL Server 2012 and above, and all Azure SQL flavors. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I want to jump to the demos. But what I wanted to mention here is that it also has a validate functionality that would allow you to test the data post-migration, basically validate and make sure the hashes of the rows matches and the result set of execution of store procedure of function, it's the same. We have a video recorded on that, so you can watch it on Data Exposed and see all the details there. Now, on the migration process itself. So that slide is just for support, so you can understand how you can need to create an SSMA project. Well, first step is, first of all, to create a project, and then you need to connect to your source. And here there's a fork where you can say, I want to perform assessment, and you don't need to connect to your target. Or if you want, you can skip the assessment, connect to your target, and do a conversion directly. What is the best practice? Well, we do recommend to run the assessments, review, make changes during the conversion, address the things that we can't automatically convert, and then move them over to your target. We've seen a little bit of the migration process, but I think a picture is more relevant. So in this case, I'm going to switch to SQL Server Migration Assistant. Here I am, and practice what I have been preaching. For people who haven't seen before, this is the startup interface. I'm running the latest version 8.22, and right now I'm going to create a new database project. In the creation of the database project, you can choose your target. I already mentioned the supported target. Azure SQL Data Warehouse, actually, it's the familiar name for Synapse Pool. So it's the old name for Synapse Pool if you have, if you need to relate to that. And the reason why you need to choose your target here is because we are optimizing the conversions based on your target type. So there may be things that do not exist and that do not exist, for example, in Azure SQL DB or not supported, but exist in SQL MI. So we are leveraging that functionality. First step is to connect to your source. And here I want to highlight the fact that we support different drivers. So ODP, Oracle Data Provider for .NET. And the good part is that SMA deploys also the Oracle Data Provider for .NET. So if you're going to look in the SSMA installation folder, you are going to find that DLL there. Another option is to use ODB Draw Provider or ODBC driver. So what can I do on the connection mode? Can I use TNS name? Yes, for sure. And you can also craft your own connection string if you want to. If there are properties that we do not expose through the interface, like if you want to use a certificate store or if you want to have certain encryption, you can specify that in connection string mode. Now, let's try to connect. And this is the moment.
Typing live, it's always fun.
Yeah, hitting connect button. That's oh, now it's loading. So I know it works. Cool. So the moment it actually you hit the connect button, what's happening behind the scenes, we are connecting to your Oracle, and loading metadata information from system tables. At this point, we are loading the schemas, and we are going to choose for today. The HR schema is super famous. You've seen it in all our demos, so we are not gonna skip it today. And what's happening is we are actually looking at, as I said, system views to load tables, views, procedure. How long it's going to take, it depends on the complexity of the schema. And it also depends on the number of objects that you're going to load and also how many schemas you are going to load. Do you want to know more about the queries that we are executing behind the scenes? That's fine. You can actually set the logging for SSMA to debugging, and then you're going to have in the log file all those queries that we are actually running against your Oracle server in order to collect the metadata.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It is. And it is here. So here, once it stops loading, we can show you in the global settings where you can find the default location for your log file. Another thing that we are asked is about the minimal permission. What are the minimal permission required to run this discovery? Well, we've documented them on the SSMA documentation as well as migration guides, and we've really stripped down to the minimum that we need in order to retrieve the object definition as well as the PLSQL code associated with those objects. And here there is a status bar lower on the tool where you can see loading heavy objects. We are gathering information about the packages and other things that we need. Once this is loaded, you can see the schemas that you have here. And in actually, behind the scenes, we have two metabases. One that is for the source and one is for the target. So right now, if you're going to click save for this project, and you have to click this button, not Control X, what's going to happen is we are going to write this XML structure on the location for your project. So you can reload it and you can run this later on. The same happens for the metadata. So for the target metadata. So when you're connecting to the target, we are building this tree in an XML structure and saving it in a compressed format in the same location. Well, it's your SSMA project. So you can reload the project and work on it later on or share it between the teams. And I promised you that I'm going to show you the logging location. So this is how you can set the logging. And this is the log file path. If you want, you can change it or you can use the default path. It's pretty easy. It's in the global settings. What can we do next? So we are connected to our source. You can save this and work offline on it. Or I can perform an assessment. So I'm interested in just going to follow the best practice today, and I'm going to perform the assessment. The actions assess, convert can be performed at the parent level or at any child level. So for example, if I'm going to have a table here, if I don't want to convert the entire schema or assess the entire schema, I can just right click on this table and say create report. And once I'm connected to the target, the same is going to happen there as well. So today, I'm just going to quickly perform this assessment, the creation of the report for the entire schema. You don't remember? You can drill down on these objects and you can definitely filter them down if you want to. And what's going to happen behind the scene? It's sort of a conversion. So it is the same action that we run in conversion. The difference is we are not going to save it to any target. So we are just going to create HTML reports associated with each and every object, and you're going to find those HTML reports in your file location. So if you run 6 reports and you create 6 reports, you're going to have different report folder in your project file folder, in your SSMA project folder.
Gotcha. And I'm guessing, this process, the time that it takes just depends on how many objects you're assessing.
Exactly. So it depends on how many objects you're assessing, but it also depends on the relationship and complexity of those objects because we are also running some extra queries. For example, there may be data that we have not loaded initially, like lazy loading of the data. So we may run 1, 2, 3 more extra queries to retrieve whatever we need for this phase. And once this is done, you're going to get this amazing HTML page. So Stephen worked on these amazing charts. I hope you like the colors. I had a saying in the colors a little bit. So we see here, and that's pretty straightforward information. We have 0.3 hours associated with manual work. That means there are some things that we couldn't automatically convert and that we would need to have a look at it. So we can drill down here, and these X marks makes it really easy for us to identify the table that had the issue. So in our case, is transaction 4 that had this issue. Probably the target data type is not compatible, so I can see this one here. Errors is actually show things that we couldn't automatically convert and then need to manually do. So what happens actually, we are going to comment out that piece of code. So in this case, the transaction 4 table, it's not going to get translated. If it's a piece of PLSQL code that we can't translate, we are going to comment out that piece. So that's not a blocker for you to deploy the project. It's just a commented piece of code, a functionality that you won't find on your target. So let's get back to these amazing charts here. So the first chart is going to give you like a straightforward automation percentage. So you get like 86.7% automation, which is amazing. Then we'll get the objects. We have 3 objects with warnings. Warnings are things that we could automatically convert that maybe we want to look at just to make sure we are fine with the things that we automatically translated in the tool. And the errors we already discussed about the error on transaction 4 that you need to manually address. So this is an object breakdown based on the highest severity associated with that object. Now, this part is regarding the conversion time. So, we have some things that we need to manually address. It's either errors or warnings. So in this case, we have both. We have 0.2 hours on the errors, and probably we'll have something associated with the warnings as well. But all of them are errors associated with the transaction table. So error, yeah, I can see this is error 0.3 hours. So in this case, I know I have to spend a little bit of time. And then in the lower part of the screen, there is a breakdown per tables and per view. So the first part is the automation percentage, and the second one is related with the manual effort needed to fix those things. So I know 100% of my errors is actually invested on tables. And then if you're going to drill down through the countries and so on, so through the tables, you're going to see the same sort of charts at the object level. And an important part in the pane is that you have here an option to choose all objects or just the current object. And I think that is pretty cool. So if I want to look just at the current object, it's going to show me the errors, the warnings in this case for the current object. Another good thing, and I think it's pretty cool here, that I want to show is basically the side-by-side pane. So here I have my original PLSQL, and on this side, I have the translated T-SQL. So I can see them side by side. If I would have any errors in this translation, I would have a very nice colored bar that would show me the severity, if it's an error or warning, and it would really take me directly to that section in the code. So if you have like thousands of lines, it makes it easier to navigate.
Yeah, definitely. This is really cool. I love the side-by-side view. Also, if you were trying to kind of learn how T-SQL works, if you're coming from that other space, then this would be kind of an interesting learning exercise too.
Definitely. And this is when the light turned off, me trying to learn. So I'm going to turn that on. It's a security setting on the building, nothing to do there. I cannot override it. And definitely, this is something that you can do to learn. And you can see, as a developer, it's a very good starting point. And having them side by side with the Monarch editor makes it really, really great. And I think it's a good experience.
Yeah.
And if you're missing, so you'll have also the overview section. And if you're missing the old version of the reports with all the details that drill down into the argument list, into the all of these sub pieces that compose an object and compose the whole conversion, we have the details section right here. So that's something that you can easily use to have even a deeper look. And there is also a report, which is an Excel report, which is generated and saved in the same location as your file, as your report folder, and you can actually open it and scroll and filter down the objects and use it as sort of a remediation path. Actually, I think I can even do that right now. So I just want to show you here. This is the installation folder for SSMA. So this is where we have the binaries, and this is where we have the drivers also, the DLLs that I was talking about. And right now I'm going to go to the C location. I'm going to have the SSMA projects, and of course my live demo. And in the report section, I have today's report, all the HTML objects that I was talking about. Yes, that's a lot. And you can even open each and every one of them. You can open the main index from here. It's really up to you. And as you can notice, I have the report.xml, which is the actual Excel. And so what's behind the scenes in this Excel? Well, there's tons of information. If you want to have like like a very detailed view, you can look here where we break down for those, let's say, subcomponents, the argument type, the procedure body, parameters, and so on. Or you can even have a more detailed selection based on the schema and all the objects. Now, if you are interested in a high level, like objects by category, we also give you the statistics here, how many indexes, procedures, triggers, views. And something that you can use, and I think that's really nice, you can use in your remediation phase, we also have the error messages and the objects associated with those messages, plus the manual conversion times. So that's another cool thing that you can find in this Excel file, and you can use it, as I said, to monitor your progress in fixing those. And of course, the same is valid for error message, for warnings.
Awesome. This is really cool. You know, I know you've shown it in a few different ways, but I love how you tell us like how much time is it going to take for me to fix those errors? Because then, especially if I had a lot of errors, I can have an idea of, oh, it's only going to take me an hour though, or a couple hours, or, oh, hey, this one error is going to take me a really, really long time. So maybe you want to think about how to go forward with that. So I think that's a really just kind of like extra thing that is actually going to be really useful.
And we can even help you further. So we have a component which is called Fix Advisor. So if you're going to have the same error in several places with the same pattern and you fix it once, we can automatically pick up. It's machine learning based, and it's going to propose to fix it in all other places.
Oh, wow.
So
cool.
Yeah, it's even cooler. So that's going to help and save some time. Well, is the manual conversion time very accurate? Well, not always. It depends on the skills of the person. It depends on how familiar that person is with the source and the target. So maybe different things that may contribute to a higher or lower conversion time. Cool. So now that I've performed the assessment and I know I have an idea about what's done automatically and not, well, the next stage is to perform the conversion itself. But even before performing the conversion, there are some things that I can set. And these are in project settings. So you can have, well, I'll need to zoom in a little bit here to show you. So you can define certain behaviors at conversion time. You can decide if you want to convert count functions calls to count big in certain context. You can decide if you want to use this no-link concat function calls and so on. So there is a big list of things that you can actually see here. Let me go back to the project settings. So in the general part, and things that you can set even before converting or after converting. So have a look at this. There are also type mappings that you can customize if you are not very happy with what we currently have. And you have the arguments type mapping, column type mapping, local variable type mapping, and also return values type mapping. How
Pretty
many
cool.
type mapping?
For some
Yes.
reason, when you zoom in on the type mappings, your screen goes black.
Oh, that's a no-go area. So don't change the type mapping. Okay, let me do that again. Let's see. Let's see if this time it's gonna work. Otherwise, you'll have to search for it.
They'll have
So
to try it themselves.
exactly, try it yourself. Do it yourself. That's what happens with the type mapping. Okay, so let me try now. Is it any better?
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So those are the things that I was talking about. Have a look and see if these are useful. Well, definitely they are useful, or if you want to customize it. So enough about type mapping. Let's do some actual conversion. But remember, we can't convert without connecting to the target because we need to save the converted data tree, so to convert the objects somewhere. So right now we have no metadata for our target. So just let me quickly connect to my target, okay, which is an Azure SQL DB. And it's going to load actually the data here. So right now I have my local database. So it's connected to my target. It retrieved the information about the HR database. And now it's building locally in this project this database that I can reuse afterwards. So it's time to actually convert. So at this point in time, I'm going to perform convert schema. It says, well, you already have these objects in your target database. What do you want to do? Override, skip? So I'm going to click override all. You can imagine I've done this several times just for the sake of it. I always wake up in the morning and say, what conversion should I do today? So I'm gonna do that as well today. So you see you have the same errors here. It's about, we have a little bit more detail from number data type, which can actually cause data loss. And we have also an information message saying that we added the index for row ID. The unique index for ID column, which we are using during the conversion. So there are several things that you may want to look at. But one of the things that I wanted to show you, because we already have a demo on Data Expose that shows you like the steps for conversion and data migration. I wanted to zoom in on the statements part. So what if I have things which are not stored within the database? What if I have tons of PLSQL stored out there in scripts, in a DBA's back pocket? So how do I bring those things here? Well, we have a node here. I'm not sure if you've noticed it. It's called statements that you can use to add the dynamic PLSQL. So you can just say, I want to do my select star from anything, I don't know. And then you are going to you're going to save this one, and you can use it even later on. So do you want to save the changes? Yes. But and if you don't want to remove it, it's very easy, remove statement. So that works fine if I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 statements, but I'm not going to like copy paste right now. I'm going to have like a sour hand of copy pasting if I'm going to do that for 1,000 statements.
Right.
Yep. So what options do we have? Well, you can run SSMA in command line. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that. With the SSMA installation folder, we have something which is actually called SSMA for version of the tool, flavor of the tool, console.exe. And even more than that, I can show you actually in the installation folder. So let me go back, program files, Oracle. We have something called sample console scripts. So here you can actually find some sample console scripts to run SSMA in command line. So we have,
Oh.
yeah, it's pretty cool. We have a few templates. So that made my life easier, much easier. So I'm doing the SQL statement conversion sample. So that's the one that I'm using. So you basically, you can use, well, I'm using two files. One is the one where I'm defining the workflow, and the second one is the one where I'm defining the variable values. So let's have a look on how these files are going to look. So SSMA in command line can input as parameters either the location for these files or the parameter itself. So the first file, which is, I think, is the most important, is the one that defines the flows. So what do you want to do in your SSMA console app? So in my case, you can even open a project. So in my case, I've commented everything out, so you can read through all of these nice pieces here with the authentication value. You can open a connection, you can create a project, you can open a project. So in my case, I'm just opening the project. So I already created a demo project. I'm opening that project, and I am adding to that project basically all the dynamic PLSQL statements that I found in a folder. So that is the core of the entire functionality. So here I'm doing the convert SQL statement. I'm setting the context, the destination, where I'm setting the location for my summary report. And the most important part is I am setting the source convert SQL sample files. So let me try to do that again. So this is my source.
Your screen went black.
Oh, again. Okay. Then I think I know how to avoid it, at least. How to fix it, not yet, but how to avoid it, I think I know. So let me try to do something else. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the SQL files is actually the location where I'm reading all the files. And you see, I don't even have to provide the name. I'm just saying all files with SQL extension, load them and convert them. And another amazing stuff is that I can provide the folder where the output, the converted PLSQL is going to be actually written, well, converted to T-SQL. So that's convert SQL reports.
Okay, so if I get this right, you can use the console to essentially, you took a template and commented out a bunch of stuff that you didn't necessarily need at this moment, but all of the stuff is there in the template, and then you just point this to a folder, and it's going to convert all of your Oracle scripts to T-SQL and put them in a folder where you tell them. So even if you had like, I don't know, like 100 different scripts, it would do all of them, or like, what's the scale of this?
The sky's the limit. So you're right, Anna, and you got it right. That's what we are doing, and
Awesome.
We are converting all the files. So there's no limit there. And here I'm using another file just because I wanted to define a file for variable value. So here I'm using a set of variables instead of just providing instead of providing the actual locations. I'm just using the variables. And then this is a file that I'm using to set the values for those variables. Do I really need to do all of this? Like, no, I just want to follow up the best practices. Like, if you define your flow, you have a different file where you set the value for those variables, and then provide both files as an input to the command line.
Awesome. This is really cool, Alexandra. I just wanted to say, like, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'd love to see, what else you can show us. I know you mentioned a few other things you might show us.
Definitely. So let me finish this one to show you that it works. So first is the console. See, first is the console app. So I'm running this with the parameters. Dash v is for variables. So I have the file, and I also can override from command line the variable value. So here in the file, I have convert SQL reports defined, but I'm overriding this from command line just to show you that I can. So I'm going to run that right now. Just press 1 second. Yeah, now this is running. And what's going to do is I'm going to open the project, add those statements, convert them, and then you see how fast it is, write them to my output
Nice.
folder. Yep. And now let's see what's in my output folder. So I have the converted queries folder. Okay, it's right here. So these are the files which were actually converted today. And that is pretty cool.
Very cool.
So what else is we already have a video on the data movement and how you can move the data. So and how you can synchronize the schema. So I'm not gonna duplicate that. I'm just gonna skip to the next important part of the presentation, which is the data migration itself, online versus offline. The demo is going to show you how to do it. The part that I wanted to talk about here is actually related to what options do you have for the offline. So we already saw, you can see in the data expose video, the SSMA client side, server side, but we also have Azure Data Factory copy activity. You can use Azure Databricks, and if you have petabytes of data, you can even use a data box to actually move that data. SSMA can also generate SQL Server integration services, so you can customize those packages if you feel like to. And of course, you can even leverage that further. For the incremental data sync, we don't have a lot of first-party solution, and that's a reality. The only solution that we have is a CDC component. It's actually an Unity component and SQL Server integration services, which can run either in on-prem or data factory integration runtime. But we are working on enriching and finding a solution for that. So I'm going to share more details maybe next calendar year about what we are doing in that space. There are third-party solutions available and also Azure Databricks if you want to. And the reason why I put this slide is because I know there are tons of questions about the data movement, and I wanted to address some of those.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alexandra. And I think maybe the next topic would be talking about the applications.
Definitely. So you got it right, Anna. So we were thinking about application migration. So the databases, we have a lot of content there, but what do we do on the application side? And it would be great if we could have a magic button that is going to just, move the application and convert it automatically. We don't, but we have something which is pretty close. The first thing to start with is a decision matrix. It's not accurate, but it sort of gives you an idea of the effort that you would need to invest in that space. It's not, as I said, it's just guidance. Most of the cases, the answer can be, well, it depends, to be honest. But this is something that would give you a very high level bird eye perspective on the effort. And the second part is the tool itself. So we had an extension. It's actually a Visual Studio Code extension. We call it Data Access Migration Toolkit that can be used to assess your application. So what does the tool do? It goes through different supported file types. You can go from XML, you can go Java, you can go C#, you can do 60 file, and it can assess, try to discover and extract something that we consider SQL queries. For Java files, we can also look at data catalog APIs. So we can say, well, look at this API, this is compatible with SQL, or maybe there are different parameters that you would need to add for SQL Server. And that's a huge help for the developers. Needless to say, sometimes we spend hours looking for the connection string and where is the connection string defined, where is the value set. And I think that's a big help for people who are looking to update and also modernize or upgrade their applications to work with an Azure SQL DB or any other SQL database.
That sounds pretty powerful. Oh, this is perfect. I was going to say, I've never seen this before. I'd love to see it.
Yes, I would love to see it also. It's not like I haven't, but I'm really proud to really demo it every time. So this is Visual Studio Code. I know most of the people. I'm not a developer myself, but I get around with Visual Studio Code a little bit. So this is where you can find the Data Access Migration Toolkit extension. We have support for actually free source databases for free dialects, IBM DB to Oracle and SQL Server. So besides Oracle to SQL migration, you can also use it in SQL to SQL in homogeneous scenarios, as well as DB2 to SQL. So let's make it work. Here I have just a very simple sample application. It's just opening a connection using the Oracle JDBC driver to open a connection string to an Oracle and then execute a simple select query. So first of all, let me get that out of the way. And let's see if this is visible. So at this point, I'm just doing a simple select, a dynamic PLSQL query. So I would like to understand, what do I need to change? Imagine you have thousands of lines of code. So I'm just going to run my extension. I can analyze file by file or the entire workspace. I imagine people who have tons of developed code, they want to do the entire workspace. So today I'm going to choose also my dialect. We are going for Oracle, of course. And you see, it's really fast. I don't have tons of files, but it's pretty fast. And what I get here is a pretty cool report regarding the number of files that have been scanned, action item found, and how many files are affected. So out of 12 files scanned, I actually need to change or have a look at 5 files. And beyond that, you also have some information regarding the language, the connector, and how many files this was found. On the results summary, that's the part which is quite interesting. So here I have the connection strings identified. So I know for sure my connection strings are here, and this is browsable. If you click on it, it's going to take you to that piece in the code. So it makes it really easy to modify it. And another cool thing, you can even do show more, is you have the data access API reference. So in this case, I'm not sure if it's visible for you guys. So I have the prepare statement, and it was able to pick that up and see, this is in line 45, to see, and actually raise it for you so you can review it. Another thing is about the way SQL connection is created. So you may want to create with the SQL connection and get connection as compared to Oracle. And the cool part that I'm interested in is actually the SQL query. So I have it in several files, but this is my dynamic PLSQL, which was picked up automatically. And here I have also some low confidence queries, which can or cannot be SQL queries. So we have high, low confidence, and medium confidence based on the association and number of keywords that we found. And the cool part is that you can actually save this one. You can save it as HTML document, or you can save it as JSON. And let me do that. I'm going to save it as JSON. Save. And then I'm going to open it. And let's see what's behind the scenes. Okay, So here we have the JSON structure with file, the full path, fully qualified path to the file location. You also have the query that we believe it's a dynamic PLSQL query and a high confidence. So high confidence is 1, medium confidence is 1, sorry, high confidence is 2, medium confidence is 1, and low confidence is 0.5. So we don't get 0. And then you also get some information regarding the APIs. Why did I save it to JSON and not to HTML? HTML is much more easier to browse. Well, I saved it to JSON to show you how you can actually process it, extract all the dynamic PLSQL queries, and then you can repeat the previous step, run SSMA in console line, and automatically convert. So how do we do that? And well, this is a very small piece of JSON of PowerShell. It's just basic JSON parsing. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I just wanted to show you that it's possible. So it's something that I created just to show that it's possible. So now I am running this script. So it's extracting basically each and every dynamic PLSQL query with a high confidence from that JSON and saving it to the output file. So here, let me get back to my DNT. And in the conversion output, I have this query being extracted. So I've also added the file path as a comment in your PLSQL, in your SQL. It's actually PLSQL file. Why? Because if you want to rebuild the JSON after conversion, you can do that. So the next step would be to basically repeat the same thing that I did earlier, which is provide this folder as an input to SSMA in console line and perform the conversion again. So you already know how that is done. I think the nice part is that you can extract easily with a very simple PowerShell script these queries. And don't forget to also add a location or an identifier that would allow you to reconstruct it at the end and know the location for your converted query.
Oh, this is really cool, Alexandra. I really like how you're kind of showing us this combination of tools that becomes very powerful when you're migrating from, for example, Oracle to T-SQL. So this has been really, really useful. We have just a few minutes left. I'd love if you have any like final tips or tricks or advice as we kind of close out.
So just to close out, I just want to say, don't forget about remediation and testing. Don't forget about optimization. Heterogeneous migrations are not always the simple, straightforward thing to do, but I say are the most rewarding because it's about modernization. It's about leveraging the power of a new database system, of built-in intelligence, query processing, security, and so on. And I just want to keep in mind that we do have the tools that would allow you to automate a pretty decent part of this process.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alexandra. This has been an awesome episode. As always, every time you come on the show, we always see some really cool stuff. I did want to remind viewers that you were part of a mini series that we have on YouTube, and you and your team have done a few episodes there. So some of the things you mentioned, maybe folks want to go check out, they can check that out. We have just 1 minute left. I was wondering if you would be interested or would be able to share anything about what's coming down the pipeline. And if it's okay if you can't.
Definitely. So we are busy and we are working on the new experience. So what we want to land is basically an end-to-end experience for Oracle migration. That this goes even further than SSMA, and that can take you from discovery until the end, including the data, the online data movement, and so on. So our goal is to really make it click, click, click to go from Oracle to any Azure or SQL target. And this would not be possible without the amazing team and that I'm working with. Part of them are here today. So I just want to say thank you to all the people who are working really hard to land this for us and our customers.
Awesome, wonderful. And we'll be keeping close tabs on this, Alexandra. So maybe we'll have to have you back on the show when as new things start to land, we'll have you on the show so we can keep folks up to date. Thanks again so much, Alexandra. Thanks so much to Stephen and Ben for sticking around and answering questions. To our viewers, thanks for joining us. We hope this was useful for you. If it was, feel free to like this video, leave a comment, turn Alexandra's lights on. And with all that being said, we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.
Thank you so much. Well, that was just in time. So I promised it was not a synchronization, and they don't even come up. So that's my cue. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.